before the morning light, when the air is still and the world has not yet remembered its noise, you sit beneath a sky that does not sleep. Somewhere beyond the silver horizon, a telescope is awake, its mirrors wide and unblinking, drinking the faintest traces of light that have traveled for lifetimes. And tonight, or rather in this thin space between night and day, the telescope whispers something new, a line of data, almost nothing, a ripple in the dark, an object no one expected, moving against a familiar dance of planets. It came quietly. No flare, no sound, no herald of arrival, just a line of numbers on a scientist's screen. A speed too great, a path too curved, an orbit that makes no sense for anything born of our sun. At first, they think it must be an error, a reflection perhaps, or a piece of debris. But the curve holds, the motion persists, and soon the realization seeps through observatories and labs like dawn itself. Something has entered the solar system from beyond. You imagine it then, a small traveler, not even a mile wide, rushing through the vastness. Rock, maybe metal, perhaps something stranger still, its surface scarred by the long loneliness of interstellar space. It has drifted between suns for millions of years, passing through regions no light has touched in eons. No one guided it. No one sent it. It simply is, an orphan of the stars, now brushing past our quiet neighborhood. You picture it moving through the void, carrying stories no one can read. Its surface might hold trapped gases, frozen long before Earth's first ocean formed. Tiny craters like letters in an ancient script, unreadable yet deeply familiar, because in a way, it feels like memory itself, something from before we knew how to remember. When scientists first trace its path, they find that it doesn't belong. Its speed, its angle, its origin, all whisper somewhere else, somewhere outside the reach of our sun's gravity. It is what astronomers call an interstellar object, a visitor not bound to any star, the first of its kind ever seen. And with that realization, a silence spreads, the kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of wonder too large for words. You can almost feel the pause ripple through the human mind, the collective heartbeat of curiosity, because this is what we've always longed for, isn't it? To know that the universe remembers us, even briefly, that it still sends messages, even if written in dust and distance. You imagine standing in that observatory as the first data prints out, a thin ribbon of black and white dots, faint as breath, each pixel a testimony. Something else exists, and in that moment, the noise of the world falls away. It's just you, the stars, and the knowing that we are not alone, not in life perhaps, but in motion, in matter, in the great circulation of cosmic debris. The object receives a name, 3I/Atlas. To most, it's a sequence of symbols. To a few, it's a calling card from deep time. 3I, the third interstellar object ever discovered. Atlas, for the telescope that found it, the one that bears the myth of a titan holding the heavens. But to you, the name feels softer, like something seen in a dream and half forgotten upon waking. A name that hums rather than speaks. You trace its orbit, a sweeping arc that slices through the solar plane like a quiet signature. It is not captured, not slowed, not bound. It comes, it passes, it leaves. Even our sun's great gravity cannot hold it for long. In its brief visit, it reminds you that everything, even stars, are temporary guests. Every atom that makes your body has traveled the same cosmic sea. You are, in a sense, kin to the traveler. You think of what must have seen, the dim glow of alien suns, the storms of giant worlds, the long drift through blackness so pure it forgets light exists. It carries no eyes, no purpose, no story, yet its very presence becomes one. Perhaps the story is ours, that when something passes from the unknown into the known, it changes us more than it changes itself. The scientists begin to argue. Some say it's just rock. Others whisper it's something more. Its shape, they note, is not quite what physics predicts, elongated, almost crafted. Its brightness fluctuates in a pattern that seems deliberate. Theories bloom like frost. A fragment of shattered world, a shard of cosmic ice, a relic of a long-dead civilization. No one knows. And yet, everyone listens to the data, to the silence, to the hum of the universe reawakening its mysteries. You too listen, not with instruments or numbers, but with stillness. You imagine the object coasting past the orbits of Mercury, Venus, Earth, its path untouched by noise or need. And for a heartbeat, you see Earth from its perspective, a pale blue reflection, trembling against the black. Our radio signals barely reach it. Our curiosity, perhaps, travels farther. You breathe slowly, letting the thoughts settle like dust and light. There is something profoundly gentle about this kind of encounter. The universe does not demand we understand, only that we notice. And in noticing, we become part of its story. 3. I/Atlas will leave soon. Its path will carry it back into the deep, where gravity loosens and light grows thin. But for now, it drifts in the shared space between wonder and knowledge, that delicate edge where science feels like prayer. You close your eyes and imagine the traveler's silence. No engines, no signals, no purpose. Only motion, pure, unending, serene. It will continue long after we forget its name, long after the data files fade. And maybe that's a lesson, that not all visitors are meant to stay. Some are meant to pass through, to remind us of how little we know and how much we still can feel. The dawn begins to rise. The telescope shutters close. The hum quiets. In the pale light, everything returns to ordinary, and yet you sense something has changed in the air, in your breath, in the rhythm of your thoughts. You have glimpsed the foreign and the familiar. You have watched the sky whisper its secret, and the whisper remains gentle and unfinished. You look up one last time. The visitor is already moving beyond sight, but its echo, a trace of light and wonder, lingers. You think about the paths that cross only once, the stories that pass through without belonging, and how even absence can leave a mark on the soul of the sky. Somewhere in the silence of the telescopes, a new question forms, a question that feels almost alive. What else out there might be moving toward us unseen? The observatory breathes in whispers. Every surface glows faintly, monitors like distant moons, red lights pulsing like slow heartbeats. You step softly across the metal floor, careful not to disturb the silence that feels almost alive. Here, among cold instruments and colder air, the stars are not just looked at, they are translated. The telescope outside, vast, patient, precise, is a kind of eye that never blinks. Its mirrors, polished into near perfection, cradle the entire sky in their silver arms. You watch the data flow across a screen. Tiny squares of light, pixels, measurements, coordinates. Each one a confession from the universe, a message sent across millions of years. A photon leaves a star before humans ever walked, crosses a gulf of space, and ends its journey inside this dark room. What you see on the monitor isn't just light. It's memory perfectly preserved. And yet, memory is rarely complete. The scientists working here know that every image contains more than it seems. Cosmic dust can masquerade as planets. Reflections can imitate new galaxies. A miscalibrated sensor can invent entire worlds. So they clean the data, filter it, adjust it, not out of deceit, but in pursuit of truth. Still, something about this night feels different. The numbers that fill the screens do not fit the usual rhythm. You move closer to the terminal. The operator's face glows pale in the low light, her eyes fixed on the incoming data stream. Line after line scrolls upward. Timestamps, brightness, positions, and then a brief pause. A gap. Something missing. When the stream resumes, the object you were watching, the visitor from another star, has vanished from the record. The logs continue as though it never existed. She notices you watching. It's probably just a transmission error, she murmurs, though her voice wavers. You both know the telescope doesn't make that kind of mistake. You glance toward the dome above. It's slit open to the cold sky. Beyond it, the stars shine with indifferent precision. The telescope continues to move, following its programmed arc, as if nothing unusual has occurred. But you feel it, that subtle tremor of knowing when something has been erased. You lean over the console and reopen the archive frame. For a moment, there it is, a faint, moving faster than it should, cutting to the field of stars. It flickers, almost like a heartbeat, then dissolves into noise. The next frame shows empty space. She exhales. Maybe we shouldn't report this yet. You hear in her tone not fear, but reverence, as if the image itself were sacred, too delicate for the world outside. In science, discovery is supposed to be public, shared, repeatable. But discovery also carries weight. Some findings unsettle, some contradict. And sometimes the simplest act of seeing becomes too heavy to hold. So people edit not to deceive, but to preserve what feels safe. Yet you can't help but wonder, what happens when the truth itself is a danger? You imagine the telescope's mirror outside, gleaming under starlight. It knows no caution, no censorship. It reflects what it sees, without judgment. But the human mind, the interpreter, adds layers of fear, politics, wonder, and doubt. Every observation passes through two filters, the mirror and the mind. The first is perfect. The second never is. You think of the telescope's heart, a detector chilled to near absolute zero, so sensitive it can feel the faintest whisper of radiation. Every photon that touches it becomes a record, a point in an image, a note in the cosmic song. Together, billions of them form pictures so vast that they can reveal galaxies once invisible to every eye. And yet, sometimes, in the depths of those images, something doesn't belong. A shadow, a pattern too deliberate, a streak that moves against the logic of orbit and gravity. The scientists call it anomaly, a neutral word, sterile, precise, as if language could strip wonder of emotion. But for you, the word feels alive. Anomalies are the universe's way of whispering secrets too strange to fit our maps. And now, the Visitor's Trail, the faint echo of 3i/Atlas, is one of them. Its data has become an anomaly, and anomalies make people uneasy. You sit back and close your eyes for a moment, feeling the hum of machines beneath your feet. The observatory itself seems to be thinking, digesting the night's light. You imagine it as a living organism, lenses as eyes, wires as veins, computers as a dreaming brain. Its pulse beats in data cycles, its breath measured in cooling fans and quiet clicks. And somewhere deep inside it, the truth flickers like a hidden heartbeat waiting to be seen. Perhaps you think this is how the universe protects its mysteries, not by hiding them in darkness, but by letting us doubt what we've seen. Doubt becomes a veil that truth wears, not to deceive, but to delay understanding until we're ready. The scientists around you type quietly, filing reports, labeling the object's disappearance as artifact or error. It is easier that way. The night continues as though nothing has changed. But in your mind, the image persists. You can still feel that faint pulse of light, that trembling between pixels. It's as if the telescope itself hesitated, seeing something it was not meant to. You wonder if machines can experience wonder, if a telescope, built only to measure, can ever know when it has glimpsed something sacred. Outside, dawn is beginning to thin the sky. The stars fade one by one, and the telescope begins to rest. The operator stretches, saves the night's log, and powers down the screens. You linger a moment longer, watching the last faint traces of data flicker away. The silence that follows feels thick, full of unsent messages. You step outside the dome. The air bites gently at your face, sharp and clean. The horizon is turning pale blue. For a moment, you imagine the telescope's mirror is still reflecting. Even in rest, still remembering what they've seen. You look up, knowing that somewhere out there, beyond all the predictable orbits, the visitor is still moving, unseen by any lens. You wonder what else the telescopes have seen and chosen not to tell. How many secrets the data holds. Patterns that vanish between frames. Truths lost to human caution. Maybe the sky doesn't keep its mysteries from us. Maybe we keep them from ourselves. You close your eyes, letting the chill of dawn wrap around you. The observatory behind you hums softly, like a sleeping creature. Its silence is not absence but pause, a held breath between revelations. And in that quiet pause, you feel something stirring, a sense that what vanished tonight is not gone, only waiting. The stars will return and the telescopes will open again. When they do, you'll be here, watching, listening, ready to see what refuses to remain hidden. Because sometimes the night doesn't end with darkness. Sometimes it begins again with light that no one dares to name. And somewhere, Deep within the system's archives, a faint echo remains, a signal beneath the noise, waiting for someone to listen closely enough to hear it breathe. You return to the observatory in the quiet hour between night and dawn, that strange pocket of time when the world feels half asleep and half awake. The screens glow once again, lines of code whispering across them like constellations made of logic instead of light. It has been days since the visitor's trail vanished, yet its absence continues to hum through the machines. Something, you feel, is still speaking, only now it uses a language of numbers. The new data arrives in waves. Each wave is a frame, each frame a story written in photons. To the human eye, it's just brightness and contrast, dots and shadows. But beneath that simple surface lies a rhythm, faint, persistent, almost alive. You don't notice it at first. You only sense it, like a heartbeat you can't quite locate. The computer's algorithms flag anomalies automatically. They are trained to notice what doesn't fit, the stray pixel, the noise, the inconsistency. Usually these are dismissed as errors, cosmic rays, or electronic ghosts. But this time, the flag regions begin to cluster. They form patterns that repeat across frames, even when the telescope is pointed at empty sky. It's as though the emptiness itself has begun to move. You lean closer to the monitor. The numbers flow in columns, brightness, coordinates, timestamps, all ordinary things. Yet the digits rise and fall with a strange rhythm, a kind of slow pulse. If you convert them into sound, the result is not static but tone, a low, steady thrum that seems to breathe. It isn't random. It has tempo, structure, pause, like something waiting to be understood. Science has words for this: periodicity, coherence, non-random correlation. But you prefer to think of it more gently. The data is dreaming. Each photon, each pixel, arranging itself into patterns that remind you of waves on a shore, repeating, receding, returning. You listen through the numbers, and what you hear feels almost human in its insistence. You recall how radio astronomers once heard something similar in the 1960s, a rhythmic pulse that came from deep space. At first, they thought it was intelligent. They named it LGM-1 for Little Green Men. Later, it became what we now know as a pulsar, a spinning neutron star, broadcasting at heartbeat of magnetism through the void. Nature, it turned out, had its own sense of rhythm, one we were only beginning to hear. And now, decades later, your telescope hums with a new kind of pulse. It isn't radio, and it isn't light. It is hidden in the statistical residue of images, the subtle shimmer that remains when you strip everything else away. If light can echo, this is its whisper. If data can dream, this is the moment it turns over in its sleep. You start to test a pattern. You subtract, normalize, correct for instrument drift. Still, the rhythm remains. It shifts slightly, but never disappears. Each night, it returns with the same cadence, the same gentle pulse. It's as if something unseen passes through the telescope's gaze, leaving fingerprint of presence rather than form. You bring it up to the team. They listen politely, nodding in the soft fatigue of midnight science. One of them smiles. Probably interference. He says, Wi-Fi, satellite bleed, atmospheric reflection. You nod, though you know it isn't. You've seen interference. It flickers, it fades, it doesn't repeat with the patience of life. This rhythm is too calm, too self-consistent. It feels like intention without voice. Later, when the others leave for coffee or sleep, you stay behind. The hum of the servers fills the air, the quiet pulse of machines keeping watch. You open the raw data and stare into its noise. Noise, you think, is never truly empty. Even in randomness, there are stories that refuse to dissolve. You plot the signal again, frame by frame. The peaks and troughs trace a pattern almost like breathing. If you overlay the nights, the same shape appears, a slow inhale, a slow exhale. Something in the cosmos is moving to a rhythm that feels startlingly familiar. You can't explain it. You can only feel it. It's as though the universe itself is practicing the art of calm. You close your eyes for a moment. The numbers on the screen flicker, behind your lids like afterimages of stars. You imagine the visitor, 3I/Atlas, drifting through the darkness, perhaps leaving behind his rhythm as it passed. Could data carry the echo of its motion, the residue of its field? Could gravity or light remember what once moved through them, like wind remembering the shape of a hand that brushed against it? You run another simulation, and the pattern appears again. Clearer this time, as if it has been waiting for you to notice. It isn't a message, not in the human sense, but it has the same gravity as a thought. The pulse matches a period of exactly 73 seconds, a strange, almost prime rhythm, too deliberate to dismiss. When you translate the data into sound again, the tone vibrates softly through the speakers, a low, resonant hum that fills a room like the echo of a memory trying to take form. You sit there for a long time listening. The sound doesn't frighten you. It soothes you. It feels like listening to the universe exhale. You realize that for all our measurements, for all our precision, what we truly seek is this: the sense that the cosmos is not indifferent but awake in some quiet, unhurried way. You record the signal carefully. You note its coordinates, its amplitude, its repetition. But you also make a private note, written in softer language. It feels alive. You know the others won't understand that phrasing, so you don't send it. Some truths need time to grow, like seeds that sprout only in silence. Outside, the wind shifts across the dome. The telescope repositions, its gears moving with slow grace. You feel as though it, too, has heard the rhythm and is turning to listen. The stars slide into new alignments, their light arriving one photon at a time. And through that light, the pattern continues, patient, steady, certain. You think of how every living thing, from your heartbeat to the flicker of neurons in your mind, moves in waves. The universe, perhaps, does too. Maybe there's no true separation between matter and rhythm, only different expressions of the same hidden tempo. The stars breathe in centuries, we breathe in seconds. Both are simply ways of marking the passage of being. As the final data frame completes, the pulse fades into background again. The monitors dim, the hum softens, and the night folds in on itself. You sit in the dark, eyes open, ears tuned to the silence that follows the rhythm's retreat. It feels as though something has slipped just beyond reach, leaving behind only the echo of its pattern, a presence in absence. You wonder, then, if this is what truth often looks like, not a revelation, but a recurring rhythm, gentle and half-hidden, waiting to be noticed again. And as dawn begins to bloom beyond the dome, you realize the data is not finished speaking, only pausing, as if preparing to reveal what lies beneath the pulse. It begins with a whisper, not of speech, but of code. At first, it is nothing, a timestamp without a sender, a link too long to trust. You hover the cursor over it as if it were radioactive, as if data itself could hum with intention. The observatory is asleep. Only the night shift servers breathe. But the hum grows, and curiosity, that quiet current beneath every scientist's calm, begins to pull you closer. You open the folder. Inside, there are files that shouldn't exist. Not because they are classified, but because no one was supposed to have noticed them. They bear the same instrument ID as the Atlas telescope, the same sky coordinates as last week's anomaly, the object that came from beyond the sun. Yet these images are different. They are too sharp, too symmetrical, too deliberate. You scroll slowly, afraid of missing the smallest pattern. In one frame, a thin streak arcs across a star field, bending light like a needle curving through silk. In another, the same streak reappears, not exactly where it should, but where it wants to be. Each repetition feels intentional, as though the cosmos itself is signaling through its own reflection. You breathe in the sterile air of the control room. The coffee on your desk has gone cold, untouched since the night before. Every scientist knows this feeling, the trembling boundary between discovery and doubt. The data does not shout. It whispers, and the whisper sounds like your own heartbeat. When you search the coordinates, you find nothing official. Yet someone has annotated them. The notes are written in haste, misspelled, punctuated by exhaustion. Words like non-terrestrial, structured pattern, not random. There are images marked with circles, others with sections blurred out. A human hand has erased what a human mind could not yet understand. You lean back, close your eyes for a moment. Outside the observatory dome, dawn begins to leak into the desert horizon. The first light slides over metal and glass, turning the telescope's frame into a sculpture of reflection. You think of how light itself leaks, bending through atmosphere, scattering across dust, revealing things we never intended to see. Maybe this leak is no different. Every field of science has its forbidden dawns, those moments when something new arrives before the mind is ready to accept it. The physicists who first glimpsed quantum uncertainty. The astronomers who watched galaxies recede faster than reason allowed. The biologists who discovered codes hidden inside life itself. Each discovery began not with certainty, but with an uninvited leak, a sudden overflow of reality into a fragile container of knowledge. You return to the data. One of the files carries a name that feels out of place. Heartbeat.wave. You open it, expecting noise, cosmic background radiation, maybe, but it's different. It pulses in a rhythm almost organic, rising and fading like breath. You check the metadata. Recorded by an experimental sensor, one meant to translate electromagnetic fluctuations into sound. You realize you're listening to the faint resonance of the object itself, a sound born from interstellar drift, converted by machines into something your body can feel. The pulse steadies. 58 beats per minute. Human resting rate. Coincidence, you tell yourself, but the whisper of curiosity disagrees. You imagine the unknown traveler, the 3i/Atlas object, turning slowly in the light of the sun, carrying fragments of another time, another system. What if the pulse isn't an echo, but a message encoded in motion? What if the universe speaks only in rhythm, and this is its simplest sentence? You know that data can deceive. Instruments can misinterpret. Humans can overreach. Yet something in the symmetry refuses to be ignored. The numbers hum like memory. They remember being seen. You think of the person who leaked this, a scientist perhaps, or a technician who watched anomalies vanish from the official logs. Maybe they couldn't sleep. Maybe, like you, they felt the pull of an invisible tide, carrying truth toward the surface. Every era of discovery has its heretics, those who dare to release the data that others would bury. In another folder, you find an unfinished draft, the 3i pattern, observational regularities, and ethical implications. Its first paragraph reads like confession. We saw it blink. Once. Not reflection, not interference. The frequency matches a human alpha wave. You stare at the line until it loses meaning. Just ink and doubt and longing. The mind, when it faces the unknown, begins to dream awake. Outside, morning gathers strength. The world begins to move again. Technicians return. Screens flicker. The hum of machinery deepens. You close the files, but the patterns stay with you, printed into the inside of your eyelids. You know that once seen, nothing can truly be unseen. As you step out into the light, a new kind of silence follows. Not the stillness of ignorance, but the hush of awakening. The silence that exists when a question is just learned to ask itself. The leak has changed everything. Not the data, not the telescope, but you. Something inside you has shifted toward the unknown, as if drawn by an unseen gravity. And in that pull, a thought forms, quiet, uncertain, but persistent. If information can leak, what else might be slipping through the cracks of what we call knowledge? You pause, listening. The hum of the world seems almost alive. And somewhere, deep in the archived frequencies of light, another pattern begins to stir, one that will not stay hidden for long. It waits for someone patient enough to hear it. There's a stillness that follows discovery, a silence that doesn't comfort but questions. You know it well now. It hums just beneath the sound of your own breathing, that sense of being on the edge of something that doesn't wish to be known. In the observatory, the air feels heavier. The same screens glow, the same coordinates blink, yet everything carries a different weight. You spend hours comparing the leaked data to official logs, tracing anomalies like echoes across a canyon. They align perfectly, except for the parts that vanish, the blank spots where no light should have disappeared. But did. You lean closer to one of the images. It shows a region of sky near the sun's elliptical path, where glare and radiation make visibility difficult. There, within the luminous haze, the 3i/Atlas object once appeared, but now something stranger lingers. A void, pixel perfect, as though a section of reality refused to record itself. The algorithms flag it as a processing error, But the pattern is too clean, too intentional. The telescope didn't fail. Something hid. You remember how certain deep-sea creatures evade predators by creating perfect camouflage, blending their reflections into the surrounding water. It's a trick of physics, light bending and scattering to erase form. Space, you realize, might not be so different. It has ways of turning its face when looked upon too directly. Astronomers call it gravitational lensing when light bends around massive objects, galaxies, black holes, invisible clusters of matter. But what happens when something bends not because of gravity, but because of intention? When the universe seems to avert its gaze, like a living being refusing eye contact. You scroll through old records, through observation logs dating back years. Similar voids appear elsewhere, small, almost unnoticeable gaps in the data, not random, not recurring in any known pattern of interference. They appear only in certain conditions, when human instruments reach their limits of precision, when telescopes stretch to see farther than they were designed to. It's as if the act of looking itself makes the cosmos recoil. You think of the observer effect, the principle that to measure something is to change it. In quantum physics, it's an unavoidable truth. The moment you watch an electron, it behaves differently, abandoning its wave-like nature to become something you can name. The universe, at its smallest scales, seems to care that it's being noticed. But this feels larger, colder, ancient. You stare at the black gap in the image until your eyes begin to ache. It isn't emptiness. It's resistance. A place where information stops flowing, like a river diverted by unseen stone. You remember a colleague once saying that astronomy is not about what you see, but what refuses to be seen. Every map of the universe is really a map of its absences. 95% of what exists, dark matter, dark energy, remains invisible. The light we study, the brilliant galaxies and nebulae, are only the lace edges of a vast, unknowable fabric. Maybe what you found is another fold in that fabric, one that tightens when pulled. You close your eyes and imagine it, a presence beyond light, woven into the vacuum, aware not in thought but in balance, the way gravity is aware, pulling, adjusting, never sleeping. A memory rises unbidden. The night you first looked through a telescope as a child. You remember the stillness of it, the hum of insects, the black bowl of sky that seemed endless. You remember feeling both enormous and small. You were looking outward, but something vast was also looking back. You didn't have words for it then. You still don't. Back in the present. The data continues to resist. Every model you run comes back incomplete. Every simulation collapses around the same absence. You watch the algorithms fail again and again, and it feels almost deliberate, as if something in the dataset understands what you're trying to do and chooses not to participate. You think of it like a mirror that refuses to show your reflection. Not broken, not opaque, simply unwilling. And then a strange thought enters your mind. What if observation isn't just passive? What if awareness itself radiates, reaching outward like light? In that case, the cosmos might feel you too, the hum of your attention brushing against its unseen edges. Perhaps this is why the great mysteries of space hide, not to keep secrets, but to protect balance. If everything that could be known were suddenly revealed, perhaps the delicate fabric of reality would unravel, overexposed by too much consciousness. The night outside grows darker, the stars dimmer. You step outside the observatory dome, letting the chill settle against your skin. The desert is silent except for the low buzz of electricity from distant towers. You look up, and for a moment, you imagine the voids above, not as absences, but as closed eyes. Even the universe, you think, must need to blink. There's something comforting in that, the idea that the cosmos protects itself from overexposure, the way your eyes do from light. You realize that discovery is not always revelation. Sometimes it is permission, given only when the mind and the moment are ready. You return inside and switch off the monitors. One by one, the room falls into darkness, but your mind continues to glow with unformed questions. Somewhere, beyond the reach of your instruments, something continues to move, silent, slow, deliberate. It's not hiding from you, exactly. It's simply being what it has always been, unseen, unmeasured, untamed. Perhaps that's the truest form of existence. Not what is found, but what chooses not to be. You write one final note in your logbook. Absence is not nothing. It is another way of being present. The words sit there, pale on the screen, waiting for meaning to catch up. Outside, the wind shifts, carrying a low vibration that almost sounds like a sigh. You listen, not with your ears, but with something deeper, a sense beneath thought. The universe is still speaking, just not in language. You stand there a while longer, breathing in rhythm with the dark. You can feel the presence of the unseen, steady and patient, waiting for you to understand that not all things wish to be known, and that the act of not knowing is its own form of knowledge. The hum of the server starts again behind you, gentle and persistent. The telescope, though at rest, continues to track its silent path across the stars. It, too, seems to listen. And as your eyes drift toward the edge of sleep, one thought lingers, quiet and unfinished. If the universe hides not out of fear, but design, what happens when a hidden finally decides to answer? It begins with a whisper again, not from a person but from the sky itself. The data stream hums softly through control room, a cascade of numbers falling like rain across your screen. At first, it's all noise, background radiation, atmospheric flickers, cosmic dust colliding with starlight. The kind of noise that fills every space between what we know and what we're still blind to. But something about this noise feels different. It pulses, not regularly, not neatly, but with a rhythm that insists on being noticed. You slow the playback, zoom in on the waveform, and listen. Beneath the crackle, there is structure, a faint oscillation that repeats every 43 seconds. You listen again, eyes half closed, letting your mind drift between data and intuition. It sounds like breath, like the pause between heartbeats. At first, you assume interference, perhaps solar wind, or some remnant of Earth's magnetic sigh. But when you compare to old logs, you find the same signal, faint and nearly erased, recorded years ago by another observatory. You recognize the same coordinates, near the region where the 3I/Atlas object passed. The pulse is older than the leak. Older, maybe, than our awareness of being watched. You imagine the cosmos as an ocean of invisible sound. Every star hums at a different frequency. Every particle vibrates in sympathy with existence. To listen is to dive beneath the waves, to feel the universe not with ears, but with patience. And here, in that deep hum, something speaks. You filter the signal again, stripping away interference from satellites and ground echoes. What remains is unervingly clean, too precise for random noise, too irregular for machine rhythm, a pattern that seems to adjust when observed, as though aware of being noticed. You remember the first time you learned about pulsars, neutron stars spinning fast enough to beam radio waves in perfect pulses, like celestial lighthouses. Their rhythms are mathematical, constant, timeless. But this is different. It drifts. It hesitates. It waits. You begin to map it. Each pulse plotted as a point in time, each point growing into a curve. The result looks almost organic. A slow inhale, a pause, a release, a wave, alive in its patience. You think of breathing, of how lungs exchange silence for sound, emptiness for meaning. Perhaps this signal is breathing, too, not in air, but in time. Somewhere deep in your memory, a lecture resurfaces. A scientist speaking about the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow left from a universe's birth. Even that ancient radiation hums with pattern. The cosmos has been talking since the beginning. We just weren't yet listening closely enough to hear the subtler tones. You wonder if this, too, is part of that ongoing conversation, a continuation of a message billions of years old, carried through matter and energy, waiting for instruments delicate enough to notice its persistence. The air in the observatory feels thicker, charged. You know it's not the signal itself, just your own awareness amplifying the stillness. The human mind isn't built for such scales. You try to imagine the source of this pulse, a spinning core, a field disturbance, maybe a remnant of something once alive. But the more you think, the less you understand. The signal refuses meaning. It offers rhythm instead. You recall how whales sing across entire oceans, their songs traveling for thousands of miles. Frequencies too low for human ears, yet felt in the bones. The cosmos, perhaps, sings in the same way. Its lowest notes travel through gravity, through dark matter, through the empty air of nothingness. And when we point our instruments toward it, we are merely joining the listening. You spend hours tracing its intervals, translating data into tone. You feed it through an audio converter, letting the pulse become sound. The speakers fill with a slow, haunting rhythm, part heartbeat, part thunder, part memory. You sit in the dark, listening. Each pulse feels personal now, like the universe gently exhaling in your direction. It's not a message, not in the human sense. It's a presence. And in that realization, something quiet shifts inside you. Perhaps not all communication seeks to be understood. Maybe the point isn't to decode, but to recognize connection, to feel the alignment between your own pulse and that of the stars. You think of how ancient astronomers once watched the heavens with no instruments but their eyes, mapping the movement of light into myth. Maybe science, for all its equations and precision, is still a form of listening, an act of reverence disguised as inquiry. Outside, the night deepens. The stars shimmer faintly, as if flickering in response to the rhythm inside the observatory. You wonder how many signals the Earth has ignored, buried in the static of its own noise. Your own thoughts begin to blend with the hum of the machines, and the distinction between hearing and imagining fades. The data on your screen pulses once more, then pauses, as though it knows you're watching. In that stillness, a strange thought surfaces. What if the signal has always been here, waiting for attention, the way a word waits for breath before being spoken? You begin to understand why so many discoveries feel like encounters. Because they are. Each one a meeting between human curiosity and cosmic patience, between question and echo. You write in your log. The universe does not speak in language. It speaks in persistence. The pulse continues, steady, unhurried, eternal. You let the sound wash over you, soft and tidal. It's not proof, not revelation, but something gentler. Companionship. There's comfort in knowing the void hums. That even across the gulf of unmeasurable silence, something still chooses to vibrate. You don't need to know why. Not yet. The act of listening is enough. As you lean back, eyes half closed, you sense the signal fading again into the wider ocean of noise, patient, unbothered by interpretation. And as you drift toward rest, a question lingers, quiet, unfinished, and magnetic. If something is speaking, and we are finally listening, who? Then is listening back? Light never truly dies. It travels, slows, bends, fades, but even in fading, it persists. When you look up at the night sky, what you see is not the present. It is a memory stretched thin across time, a slow echo still finding its way toward you. Every star, every glint, every wandering object like 3I/Atlas. All of them are stories written in light. You let the thoughts settle like dust in your breath. Light is not just illumination, it is communication. It carries the shape of what once was, the temperature, the chemistry, the violence, and the quiet of birth. Each photon is a messenger that has traveled across unimaginable distances, without forgetting where it came from. When scientists point telescopes toward 3I/Atlas, they don't see the object as it is now, but as it was when the light left it. Even if that delay is only moments, the principle remains. Observation is always an act of looking backward. To see anything at all is to peer into the past. You think of this as a strange tenderness in physics. Nothing is instant. Everything you perceive is a memory dressed as presence. Imagine one photon, just one, born from the surface of the sun. It escapes the dense interior where light takes thousands of years to rise through chaotic plasma. Then, finally free, it streams across space in less than 9 minutes, brushing past planets, satellites, and dust before bouncing from the metal skin of 3I/Atlas. Its journey continues. A ricochet, a whisper of warmth redirected toward you. You catch in a sensor or in your eye, and for that moment, the photon story ends with you. You are the final witness in its long pilgrimage. But what does it mean for light to have a memory? Not in the way minds remember, but in the way patterns endure. The wavelength of that photon carries the fingerprint of its birth. The spectral lines tell you which elements burned, which temperatures raged, What magnetic storm shaped its departure? The light does not forget. It encodes. The cosmos keeps its diary in frequency and color. 3i/Atlas reflects light differently than asteroids or comets you studied before. Its spectrum, when analyzed, doesn't quite fit the models. Some readings suggest metallic alloys, hints of something forged rather than formed. Others show organic residues, almost like carbon chains that have been scorched and rearranged by radiation. Each hypothesis bends imagination further. Is it a fragment of something ancient or the byproduct of chemistry we do not yet understand? You listen, in your own way, to the silence between those readings. The data is like static, full of possible voices, if only one knows how to hear. Beneath that static, patterns hum. Repetition, rhythm, a signal not of intelligence perhaps, but of persistence. Light repeating itself in subtle intervals, as if the object is not simply reflecting sunlight, but modulating it. The idea is almost too poetic for science, yet too structured for coincidence. You remember that in quantum theory, photons are both wave and particle, interference and certainty, movement and stillness. They are records of duality. When two waves meet, they leave traces of their meeting. Interference fringes, memory scars of encounters. Maybe all light carries this, a cumulative remembering of everything it has touched, every field it has crossed. So when 3i/Atlas glows faintly in your telescope's image, you wonder if it's reflecting more than sunlight. Perhaps it's echoing the light of distant stars it has passed, a composite memory of its long drift through interstellar space. Each reflection could contain layers upon layers of other reflections, cosmic palimpsests written by distance itself. You close your eyes and imagine light as a fluid of memory, flowing endlessly, pooling where consciousness looks. The night sky becomes a slow river of time, and you, floating in it, can only scoop fragments of what remains. You cannot see the future in light, only the aftermath of what already burned. This thought softens you. Science is often portrayed as exacting, but here it feels intimate, a practice of remembrance. When astronomers calibrate instruments to read light, they are decoding the autobiography of the universe. Every emission, every absorption line is a sentence in a story written across billions of years. The stars are not just shining, they are testifying. You imagine 3i/Atlas as a page in that story, a wandering paragraph written in reflective ink. It passes through the solar system briefly, then continues onward, carrying sunlight like a borrowed language. Perhaps, long after it has left us, some distant observer in another star system will detect a flicker of that same light, and for them, Earth will be a faint ghost in its reflection. They will be looking at our memory, just as we now look at theirs. You think about how easily we forget that observation is always mutual. To look into space is to be visible within it. The act of seeing makes you part of what is seen. Every telescope, every camera, every curious human adds a new layer to the cosmos' awareness of itself. You are not outside the story. You are written into it through light. Perhaps that is why 3i/Atlas feels different. It's not just another object. It's a mirror that moves, a fragment that keeps reminding you of the connection between sight and existence. The more you study it, the more it seems to slip from definition. Its surface flares one night, dims the next. Some days it behaves like metal, others like dust. The signal shifts unpredictably, almost like it's responding to attention. And here, science edges into philosophy. Does observation change the observed? Quantum mechanics suggests so. The wave becomes a particle only when measured. Reality resolves when looked at, as though awareness pins down possibility. You sense this paradox hovering around 3i/Atlas. The more it's watched, the stranger it appears. The data contradicts itself, small anomalies growing with every update. It's as if the object doesn't want to be understood in a single language, as if it is fluent in ambiguity. Still, you keep watching, not to conquer its mystery, but to stay close to it. There's a peace in not knowing fully, a quiet companionship between curiosity and humility. In that stillness, you understand that knowledge is not the end of wonder, it is its continuation. You look again at the faint, pale trail of 3i/Atlas across the image field, a soft curve of reflected sunlight against black. The photons reaching you now left its surface hours ago. Each one has survived collisions, cosmic dust, magnetic fields, and unimaginable emptiness just to tell you, softly, I was here. You whisper back, as if to the light itself, I am listening. The telescope hums gently, aligning for another capture. Somewhere in the data, the pattern deepens, a low pulse beneath the noise, barely perceptible but real. You can't tell if it's mechanical, natural, or simply an illusion created by your own longing to find meaning in the quiet. But you note it anyway. Every discovery begins with noticing something that shouldn't be there. The stars above seem to shimmer in agreement. The night feels awake, aware, watching with you. And you wonder, as the photons continue their endless migration, if perhaps light itself is learning to remember you, too. You begin to trace the orbit again, slow and careful, like retracing a fading signature. The data for 3I/Atlas curves across your screen, not in a straight arc, but in a line that wavers as though it remembers something. It isn't the simple, predictable path that Newton's equations would draw. There's a hesitation in it, a faint drift that shouldn't be there. The motion feels intentional. You lean closer, not because you expect an answer, but because curiosity has its own gravity, a pull that deepens the longer you resist it. The universe, you've learned, doesn't always reveal itself through grand gestures. Sometimes it whispers in decimals, in tiny deviations that seem meaningless until they echo across millions of kilometers. Gravity should explain everything about the way 3I/Atlas moves. Every object, star, planet, comet, or grain of dust, dances to its rhythm. It is the gentlest of all forces, and yet the one that commands the widest stage. You can't see it, can't feel it directly, but everything you've ever known is shaped by its patience. Einstein once described it not as a force at all, but as a bending of space-time, as if the fabric of reality itself dips where matter rests. You picture this fabric stretched out like silk, and every planet, every star weight pressing into it. 3I/Atlas drifts along that curve, its path determined by the folds of invisible cloth. And yet, something feels off. You run the simulations again. If gravity alone acts, the trajectory should be smooth, unbroken, obedient. But the data shows tiny oscillations, shifts so subtle that at first they seem like noise. Only when you slow the timeline do they reveal their pattern. It's like a heartbeat hidden inside an orbit, a pulse that doesn't belong to celestial mechanics. You pause and think of what else might be at play. The solar wind, perhaps. Streams of charged particles rushing from the sun, exerting pressure on whatever dares to cross their path. Radiation pressure can nudge comets, spreading their tails like ribbons in a current. But this object doesn't behave like dust. Its surface seems to absorb, not scatter, sunlight. Maybe it's magnetic interaction. Fields wrapping and twisting through interplanetary space. The sun's magnetic field stretches far beyond the planets, a living geometry that breathes with every solar rotation. If 3I/Atlas carries even a trace of magnetized material, it could dance differently than stone or ice. But the numbers resist explanation. The orbit bends more neatly than turbulence allows. The deviation looks, impossible as it sounds, deliberate. You close your eyes for a moment and breathe. Science, at its heart, is a conversation between patience and doubt. You learn to listen, even when the universe refuses to speak plainly. So you let your thoughts drift toward metaphor, because sometimes that's where truth hides first. You imagine gravity not as a pull, but as a story of longing, every atom yearning for every other, drawn by a memory of connection. The earth holds you not because it must, but because matter remembers matter. Stars hold planets in orbit because they can't bear to forget them. The universe, then, is not just expanding, it is reaching out. 3I/Atlas moves through this web of invisible affection, but something else is threading its motion. You feel it intuitively, a secondary presence, guiding softly, like a hand beneath the water that helps a drifting leaf find its course. Perhaps it's not another force, but a resonance, a synchronization between the object's rotation and the rhythm of space-time itself. Physicists sometimes call this frame dragging, the way a rotating mass can twist space around it, like stirring a spoon in honey. If 3I/Atlas spins fast enough, its own motion could slightly bend the very geometry it travels through. altering its path. That would mean the object isn't just responding to gravity, it's shaping it. You sit with that thought, an object so small influencing the fabric of space in which it moves. It's a poetic truth hidden in equations, that everything, no matter how slight, leaves a mark in a universe that contains it. Maybe that's what the curve means. Not defiance, but participation. The more you study gravity, the more it feels like a form of memory too, one that holds things together across time. Ancient starlight still bends around distant galaxies. Dead suns continue to shape the motion of living ones. Nothing truly lets go. The cosmos remembers in curvature. You wonder, then, if gravity might also hide secrets beyond mass and distance, perhaps an awareness woven into geometry itself. The equations don't forbid such thinking. They simply don't account for it. Outside your window, night spreads quietly. The air feels heavier now, as though the Earth's pull is more than physics, as though it is affection, drawing you close to listen. You think of tides responding to the moon's pull, oceans breathing in rhythm with a rock hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Gravity, you realize, is a conversation happening constantly between everything that has ever existed. When you look at 3i/Atlas again, you see not defiance, but harmony, an object moving in duet with an unseen partner. The anomaly in its orbit might not be a mistake. It might be music. Perhaps there are symphonies in motion, harmonies made not of sound but of space-time curvature, notes written in acceleration and decay. Maybe gravity is the universe's slowest song, and we are just learning to hear its melody. The telescope hums as you record the next set of coordinates. Each observation feels like turning a page in a vast, unfinished book. You sense that what pulls at 3i/Atlas is not mechanical, but relational, a quiet choreography between presence and potential. Somewhere, a part of you hopes that what you're witnessing is more than calculation, that behind equations there is grace, an unseen kindness in the laws that hold everything together. You remember Einstein's remark, the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. Maybe that's because it doesn't just exist, it listens back. You lean back, eyes closing, and let the idea unfold that perhaps gravity is not just a pull, but a promise. A secret hand that ensures nothing drifts forever, that everything, eventually, finds its way home. And as 3i/Atlas continues its mysterious arc beyond sight, you feel a quiet certainty forming. Whatever guides it, whatever invisible symmetry bends its motion, is not done yet. You whisper the name again, Atlas. The letters glow faintly on the monitor, white against a deep black field, as though the word itself is trying to remember what it means. At first, it's just a name, a telescope system, a survey network, an acronym born of human neatness. But the longer you look, the heavier it feels. Names do that sometimes. They begin as labels, then slowly become stories. Atlas, Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, a network of robotic telescopes scanning the heavens every night, watching for wanderers that might one day collide with Earth. It is a quiet guardian, born of vigilance and curiosity. Its purpose is simple, to warn us of what moves unseen. But still, you can't help feeling there is something mythic folded into those letters. The human mind, after all, loves to weave meaning from coincidence. And when you whisper Atlas, another image rises. The Titan condemned to hold up the sky. You imagine him there, ancient and patient, his shoulders bowed beneath the dome of the world. He is neither villain nor saint, simply enduring, forever watching. The stars he bears are the same stars that Atlas observes, each night capturing photons that have traveled for millennia to touch a mirror in Hawaii or Chile. It strikes you as almost poetic. Humanity building machines to do what gods once did, to lift the heavens, to bear their weight, to map their mysteries. You think of how names connect our instruments to myth, how language builds a bridge between knowledge and wonder. The Hubble Space Telescope, named for a man who discovered the universe's expansion. And yet the word Hubble also hums with a sense of motion, as if it were the sound of something turning slowly in the dark. The James Webb, whose mirrors gleam like open petals facing creation. And now Atlas, the Titan reborn as circuitry and silicon, lifting the cosmos once again, not with strength but with light. You lean back and watch the data stream, a cascade of numbers, each one a coordinate, a fragment of the universe translated into human code. But behind the digits, you sense story. The telescope watches for what doesn't belong, for faint anomalies that might one day rewrite what we believe about our place in space. The original myth of Atlas tells of endurance, of carrying the unbearable without faltering. And perhaps that, too, is what Atlas the system does. It carries the burden of constant observation, holding the infinite on its shoulders so that we can sleep a little easier beneath it. You imagine the telescope scattered across the earth, blinking awake at twilight, turning their glass eyes upward. They do not dream, but they are dreamt through, their purpose born from human hope, human fear, human longing to know what moves toward us unseen. The myth and the machine share quiet truth. Both are acts of devotion, one to the gods who once ruled the heavens, the other to the physics that now explains them. But beneath both lies the same human impulse to hold the sky steady, if only for a while. You trace your finger along the letters again. HLES. Each one feels like a pillar. Together, they form a structure of meaning, both mythic and mechanical. You wonder, the scientists who named it felt this too, that names are not accidents, but echoes. There's another layer to the name, hidden in plain sight. Atlas does not just look, it alerts. Its purpose is to warn, to reveal danger before it arrives. It's a messenger standing between humanity and the cosmos, a sentinel scanning for celestial strangers. And then there's the 3i before it, a marker of interstellar origin. 3i/Atlas means the third interstellar object ever observed passing through our solar system, after Oumuamua and Borisov. But the name, when spoken aloud, sounds almost like a riddle. The third visitor, seen by the watcher who carries the sky. You let the symbolism settle, like dust after a passing comet. The myth becomes a metaphor. The metaphor becomes a mechanism. It's how human understanding evolves. Through the poetry of naming. For centuries, naming has been humanity's way of grasping the ineffable. We named the constellations after gods and heroes because we needed familiarity in the unknown. Orion, Cassiopeia, Andromeda, fragment of stories scattered across darkness. The stars themselves don't care for our myths, but our minds do. They help us remember, to connect, to belong. Atlas is both myth and map, a name that carries a memory of burden and the beauty of vigilance. And in its watchfulness, it reflects something about us. We, too, carry the weight of knowledge. We, too, lift what cannot be lifted, the infinite curiosity of being aware. The deeper you go, the more you realize that this fusion of mythology and science is not accidental. It is ancient instinct. Science may measure the universe, but myth interprets it. One tells us how the stars move. The other tells us why we keep looking up. You picture 3i/Atlas again, that distant, dark traveler sliding silently across the solar plane. The telescope bears its name, but somehow it feels as if the name belongs to the visitor too. Perhaps that's fitting. Both are bearers of something heavy, data, myth, mystery. You think of Atlas the Titan again, punished to hold the heavens, yet forever in contact with them. The first astronomer, perhaps forced into endless observation. His fate mirrors ours, condemned not by cruelty, but by curiosity. And isn't that what every scientist inherits? The desire to know, the patience to hold the question long after answers collapse under their own uncertainty. Outside, the night grows deeper. You imagine the Earth turning gently, carrying its network of telescopes like watchtowers on its spinning body. Their lenses glint faintly, collecting the universe's faintest messages. Somewhere in that data is a trace of 3i/Atlas, an echo of a place you've never seen, a journey that began before humanity ever looked up. Names, you realize, are coordinates of meaning. Each one points not just outward, but inward, toward what we hope to understand. You whisper again, Atlas, and this time, it sounds less like a name and more like a vow, a promise that we will keep looking, no matter how heavy the sky becomes. You close your eyes and imagine the Titan's shoulders, the telescope's mirrors, your own thoughts bending under the same invisible weight. All part of a single, unbroken lineage of watchers. Perhaps that's what 3i/Atlas truly represents. Not a discovery, but a continuation. The myth persists, translated into equations, encoded in data streams, etched into photons that fall softly into mirrors. You smile at the thought that maybe the universe doesn't just send us strangers, maybe it sends reminders. And as you watch the last data packet arrive, you can't help but wonder, if myth and machine can reflect each other so perfectly, what else might be waiting, unseen, behind the names we have yet to give? You begin with silence, not the kind that hums before revelation, but the kind that follows when something is quietly set aside, a chart revised, a footnote omitted, a telescope's logbook trimmed for space. You've seen this before, in stories of ancient maps where uncharted waters were labeled "Here be dragons," in experiments where the unwanted results were erased with a careful hand. There is a kind of forgetting that pretends to protect truth. But as you follow the trail of the 3i/Atlas data, you start to feel that forgetting may be part of the pattern itself. The night is calm. The telescope dome rotates like a slow eyelid, revealing the same heavens it has always seen. Yet something feels different, not in what appears, but in what's been left out. A series of observations from months ago is missing. The numbers jump, gaps yawning like breaths between sentences. You imagine scientists staring at their screens, their algorithms refusing to align, their models blinking red with contradiction. What happens, you wonder, when the universe refuses to behave? To look away is a human instinct, as old as sight itself. Your eyes avert from pain, from brightness, from anything that threatens coherence. Science, for all its rigor, is still shaped by human hands. And sometimes those hands tremble. A miscalibration becomes an anomaly becomes a problem. A problem becomes something no one wants to mention during funding season. And so, silence grows, deliberate, protective, and deeply human. You read the official statement again. The deviation was due to instrument error. It sounds reasonable, even responsible. But when you compare the raw frames from the telescope's archive, the error feels too neat, too symmetrical. You think of the Greek Atlas, punished to bear the heavens forever. What weight does modern science bear, you wonder, when its truths begin to wobble? The air hums softly inside the observatory. Machines whisper as they record the next set of images. Each frame, a new slice of sky. Each exposure, another layer of trust. You remember that science, at its heart, is not about certainty but about persistence, the courage to keep asking when others turn away. Still, it's not easy to stand in that tension. Doubt can be a lonely companion. You recall the early astronomers. Galileo refusing to unsee the moons of Jupiter, Vera Rubin charting the impossible speeds of galaxies. Their discoveries were inconvenient. Too, they broke the symmetry of accepted thought, and the world at first looked away. Yet even when dismissed, their data had a quiet persistence, like a heartbeat beneath the noise. The truth does not vanish. It waits, patient, luminous, almost tender, for someone to return to it. You scroll through the data logs, and for a moment, it feels like archaeology. Every missing entry is a fossilized hesitation. Every revision a small erosion of honesty. You don't judge the scientists who omitted them. You understand. To reveal the anomaly is to risk the structure of meaning itself. And yet, what is discovery but the courage to be wrong? Outside, the night deepens. The stars continue their slow procession, indifferent to interpretation. You step away from the screens, letting your eyes adjust to the true dark. In this silence, you feel the humility that science is supposed to teach, the awareness that knowledge is only a temporary pattern drawn upon mystery. Perhaps the ones who looked away were not cowards, but caretakers of fragile order, trying to protect it from collapse. Still, the question remains, what did they see that made them turn? You find traces of correspondence, brief emails, half-deleted drafts. They speak in careful language. Statistical irregularity, outlier removal, confidence recalibration. But between the lines, you sense unease. It's as though something glimpsed through the telescope did not belong. Not an object, but a behavior, a movement that mocked prediction, something that refused to fit. You think of it as a shimmer, a flicker of logic bending under pressure. Perhaps it wasn't an alien or a signal or even a physical thing. Perhaps it was the pattern itself, showing its seams. A subtle reminder that the universe is not a machine, but a conversation. one that occasionally answers back in riddles. You trace one scientist's notes, a woman named Alara. Her last entry is dated just before the missing dataset. She writes, "It's still there when I filter differently. The others say ignore it, but it persists. I'm not sure what I'm seeing anymore." After that, her name disappears from the project reports. Transferred, reassigned, or simply quieted. You can't tell, but you can almost feel her standing beside you now, staring into that same dark expanse, haunted not by what she saw, but by everyone else's refusal to see it too. What does it do to the soul, you wonder, to know something that others deny? The mind begins to fold inward, doubting its senses, its reason. And yet, the deeper you go into that isolation, the more you begin to sense a truth that lives beneath certainty, that knowledge is not possession but relationship. To look away may be human, but to return is divine. The servers on behind you. You imagine data traveling through fiber lines, light racing beneath oceans, carrying both truths and omissions. The global archive becomes a mirror of the collective psyche, what we choose to remember, what we choose to forget. Even science, you realize, has mythology, not of gods and monsters, but of consistency, purity, and control. And like all myths, it cracks under the pressure of reality. You breathe in the cool air of the observatory, and for a moment, you understand the tenderness of those who looked away. They were trying to protect the story, the grand narrative that the universe is knowable, measurable, obedient. But the cosmos does not bow. It dances, unpredictably, beautifully, sometimes cruelly. To insist on order is to blind oneself to its music. And so, you decide not to accuse, not expose. Instead, you choose to listen, to the silence, to the missing numbers, to the story that lingers between what was seen and what was said. Because in that space of absence, something alive is breathing, something that has not yet been named. You return to the data, but this time you look differently, not for what fits, but for what doesn't, not for patterns, but for their fractures. And slowly, a shape begins to emerge, faint, uncertain, but real. It feels like a whisper. Look here, but gently. You understand then that science's greatest danger is not error, but fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of losing coherence. Yet it's an uncertainty that discovery hides, waiting for someone brave enough to see. You think of Atlas again, his eternal burden not as punishment, but as devotion. To hold up the sky is to never look away, even when it trembles. The night grows colder. You save your notes, close the console, and step outside. The dome above you glows faintly with starlight, and for a brief moment, you sense that the ones who looked away were still looking in their own quiet way, just not ready to see. Perhaps none of us are entirely. As you walk down the observatory steps, you feel the wind shift like a page turning in the air. Something is about to surface, not in the data, but in the mind that reads it. You wonder if the next discovery will demand not just new instruments, but new ways of believing. And somewhere beyond the horizon of known stars, the silence begins to move.